When I had young children a few years ago, the centerpiece of everyone's kitchen was the refrigerator. If you wanted to find out what was most important in someone's life, all you had to do was take a look at the fridge. Held up by magnets on those often gold or avocado, remember that? Gold or avocado appliances hung some of the most important things in our lives. Snapshots of loved ones, artwork by our children, schedules of important events from school calendars to acolyte schedules. Lined up next to these personal mementos were the truisms we lived by, alongside the completely off-the-wall sayings that made life laughable and therefore livable. Take, for example, the refrigerator in my friend's home in Kentucky. She elevated it to a whole new level with magnets that stretched across the entire exterior of her refrigerator from the waist up, holding a variety of critical messages. Photographs of her children playing soccer, important dates on the calendar, yes. But the truism stood out to me the most, as well as those interesting things that were in supermarket tabloid headlines. For example, here's a sampler for you. Jesus action figure heals the sick. Woman dies of happiness. Exclusive photos. I'd like to see those. Then there's the Chinese fortune expressing the hope that springs eternal in every human heart. You will come into a large sum of money. But set apart from the other messages, perched right over the handle, was this one simple line. The Lord is my shepherd. Unlike the less illustrious sayings that were posted, this, of course, comes from one of our most beloved psalms sang so beautifully by our choir, the 23rd Psalm. Of all the scripture passages my grandmother taught me to memorize, this is the one she taught me first, and the one that remains closest to my heart today. 34 years ago, I went into labor with my son Michael 5 weeks early. I was deeply worried after being told that he could be born with breathing problems due to underdeveloped lungs. In those intense moments of fear, in a situation completely beyond my control, I just started reciting the 23rd Psalm that my grandmother had taught me over and over and over in my mind. And I suddenly found myself filled with that peace that passes all understanding. Miraculously, I felt no pain whatsoever. So I can personally attest to the incredible power of this psalm, which begins, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want." What tremendous confidence David had. What absolute security. Now, I'd like just to mention that not all of the Psalms were written by David, but this one they have discovered or determined is a Davidic psalm. So it is David himself who writes, "I shall not be in want of anything. There will never arise a need in my life for which I will not have the supply, no matter what that need may be, whether spiritual, physical, or financial, the supply is guaranteed. I shall not be in want." If David had added anything to this statement, it would have been spoiled. If he had said, "I shall not lack health or food or clothes or money or anything," he would have set limits to the statement. But he sets no limits. I shall not be in want, period. What was the secret of David's assurance? Is it possible for you and me to share in this same assurance in our world today? His secret is simple. The Lord is my shepherd. This is the one and only basis of his assurance, and it is the most radical point made in the psalm. This is known as Good Shepherd Sunday throughout the church, a day when we focus on God as our shepherd and Jesus as our good shepherd. Over the last 2 Sundays, we have focused on this biblical imagery in our adult forums. 2 Sundays ago, our topic was pastoral care in the Bible. And then last Sunday, we talked about pastoral care at Bethesda and how that grew out of the scripture mandates. And in the 23rd Psalm, which is kind of where, or one of the key places where it starts in Hebrew scriptures, we are told that God is not like a shepherd. God is the shepherd. And not just a shepherd, but my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. What does that mean to you personally? Have you thought about it recently? Whether you pray daily or weekly in church, or only if you or a loved one are in a crisis, or very seldom, God is your personal shepherd. Regardless of whether you're sailing along, doing everything right, or failing miserably, God is your shepherd. Regardless of how you may have sinned miserably, either against somebody else or against yourself, and that's also part of the equation, God is your shepherd. God is our only necessity. In our world filled with the violence of school children to one another, a world in which life can turn on a dime as a loved one is diagnosed with an incurable disease, or the fall of a dear friend results in a broken hip, God and God alone is our final and ultimate reliability. God is the centerpiece that holds everything else together. Our reading from the Gospel of John this morning leads up to the critical moment in Jesus' ministry when he reveals himself to be the shepherd. He takes on this mantle from God. In doing so, he not only identifies himself as a shepherd, but us as sheep. Now, if you're like me, I'm thinking, well, that sounds pretty peaceful. That's a sweet image. Mary had a little lamb and all that, right? We see sheep as docile, lovable creatures, almost of the stuffed animal variety. But that is far from the case. When Jesus uses this image to describe himself and his flock, he does so to a group of first-century Palestinians who knew all about sheep and all about shepherds. Brother Curtis Almquist, an SSJE brother, shares that, first of all, sheep are totally and completely dependent on their shepherd, not only for protection, but also for provision. Sheep do graze and move on to greener pastures, but if they don't have the chance to move on, they will eat the grass all the way down to the roots and completely destroy the pasture. They are hopeless without help. Sheep, surprising to me, don't even have the ability to find water on their own. The shepherd must lead them to still water, as the 23rd Psalm tells us. If the water is not still, they won't drink. If sheep are hungry or thirsty, they won't rest. They refuse to lie down. So for sheep to lie down in a green pasture, as this familiar psalm tells us, they shall not be in want. They have to not be in want. Otherwise, they remain standing and bleating. So, as sheep, you and I are not coming across too well here. We are difficult and cantankerous with no ability whatsoever to take care of ourselves. And for Jesus to compare himself to a shepherd isn't a whole lot better, but at least he qualifies it by calling himself the good shepherd. You see, in Jesus' day, there was a whole series of professions and trades which were suspect, degrading, and not socially respected. Interestingly, shepherds were reputed to be among the very worst. They had a reputation for leading their flocks onto other people's land and stealing other people's sheep. A Jewish midrash from a commentary on the 23rd Psalm states, "There is no more disreputable occupation than that of a shepherd, whose pursuits are mean and inglorious." So for Jesus to use these two very loaded images, he's making a statement. He doesn't just do so for no reason. He's making a statement about identity, his and ours. First of all, he identifies himself with the lowly, inglorious profession of shepherds. And he's also making a statement about us. We are like the sheep. It's hardly a flattering picture, but as you might guess, Jesus has a purpose here. As a shepherd, Jesus identifies himself with the least and the last and the lost. Remember the parable where he goes out and he tells us that God will go out in search of that one lost sheep. We being among them. No sheep, no person is left out ever. And for that I say, to God be the glory. I'd like to close this morning by having us all take a look in our bulletins and recite together the words of this most beloved 23rd Psalm on page 4 in your bulletin, so beautifully sung by our choir. As we repeat these words together, let them sink into your soul. Think about what it means to you to say, "The Lord is my shepherd." The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. He revives my soul, guides me along right pathways for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup running over. Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What does it mean to you right now in your life today to say, "The Lord is my shepherd"?